Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. And if you enjoy the fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic.
What if Naruto became a Hyuga branch member? The story of Natsu, Rin, Hanabi and Tsunade. Chapter 1, Hyuga U. That name, its meaning is ill-omened. Of your two teammates, one was forced into retirement due to severe injuries, and the other was killed in action during the Chunin exams. You are the only one left. Furthermore, you must be aware that with your natural talent, you are not suited to continue down the path of a shinobi. The sun was sinking below the horizon. A draft snaking in from the courtyard lifted the hair from the young man's forehead at the end of the corridor, revealing a pair of somewhat hesitant white eyes. Yes, you, who had spent 13 years in this world, nodded sullenly. He bowed his body slightly, forcing himself into a posture of humility before the elder, an act he still hadn't fully grown accustomed to. However, according to the customs of the Hyuga clan, I shall employ you. Take a look. The elder sitting on the veranda pushed a document forward. You already knew what was written on it. Hyuga clan shinobi lifetime appointment letter. It was a labor contract intended for the mediocre shinobi of the Hyuga clan. Work 6 days with 1 day off, room and board included. If a high-ranking member of the main house was in a good mood, one might even be gifted valuable trinkets from time to time. The total compensation was 30,000 ryo per month, roughly equivalent to 300,000 yen Japan, or approximately 2,100 United States dollars. The job description consisted of nothing more than serving tea, delivering water, and doing odd jobs. Perhaps he would be assigned to prune the plants and flowers within the massive main house estate, trivial tasks for a shinobi. To be honest, this was a lucrative position that outsiders would break their necks competing for. You had no reason to refuse. He was a genin who had lost his teammates in last year's Chunin exams. Having failed to promote in the year 48 exams, which were arguably the easiest session in history, and suffering a crushing defeat even against a dead last, like Obito Uchiha, his career as a shinobi was essentially a closed case. Hyuga U had no talent as a shinobi. Continuing as a ninja at the start of year 49 meant the risks far outweighed the rewards. Currently, it was the third year since the outbreak of the Third Shinobi World War. A stalemate had formed with the Hidden Stone, Hidden Leaf, and Hidden Sand locked in fierce combat around the Land of Rain. Under the orders of the Third Mizukage, the Hidden Mist was continuously expanding westward, seizing small nations like the Land of Waves. They were on the verge of a full-scale invasion of the Land of Fire's eastern coast. At this moment, the Leaf's main forces were spread thin across a long, grueling frontline spanning the Land of Rivers, Rain, and Grass. To face the Mist's assault, the eastern coastal front was in desperate need of manpower. Unsurprisingly, the Hidden Leaf would soon issue mobilization orders, requiring clan shinobi, led by the Uchiha and Hyuga, to head to the eastern front to repel the enemy. You vaguely remembered that in this war, the Hyuga clan would suffer heavy losses, and the secret of the Byakugan would be leaked. Remaining a shinobi at such a juncture meant he would likely be deployed to that meat grinder of a battlefield very soon. And you was currently just a mere genin. Even with the Hyuga name, he was at best a qualified piece of cannon fodder. Yet, looking at the black and white text before him, a contract that essentially bought out the rest of his life, you hesitated. Hyuga U, did you not hear me? Yes, elder, I am listening. The elder in front of the veranda was silent for a moment before saying flatly. Then sign it quickly. Then take this appointment letter and submit it to the main house. Once you return, you can work in peace within the main house. Also, you need to fix that habit of yours, that stiff back that refuses to bend. Your parents saved my life, I will not hold it against you. But if you show such disrespect before the main house, do you wish to taste the caged bird curse again? You suddenly pushed the appointment letter back. After a long silence, he spoke. My apologies, Elder. Perhaps. I won't sign it. Dissatisfied with the compensation. No. The elder froze for a moment, then knit his brows and stared. Then what do you mean by that? It's nothing. I just feel that I might not be able to bend my back or stay on my knees. Watching you begin to stand up, the elder finally lost the last of his patience. He darkened his face and barked. Do you understand what you are rejecting? Hyuga, you have absolutely no talent as a shinobi. Even if you did, even if you became a chunin, a jonin, or an elite jonin, your situation would not change in the slightest. As a member of the branch house, for the sake of the clan's continuity, you were born to bow your head to the main house, to kneel to the main house, and to die for the main house. Just like your parents did. You bit his lip and asked in return. Then what about the Hokage? What would happen if I became the Hokage? The elder suddenly laughed out of sheer anger. He looked at the ungrateful Yu as if he were looking at some sort of joke. Then, he slowly raised his hand and formed the ram seal. In the next instant, Yu felt a surge of violent pain erupt from his forehead. It felt as though his skull was being crushed, about to spray red and white matter across the floor. Submerged in this agony, Yu instantly lost all ability to resist. He clutched his head, his whole body trembling as he ground his molars together, blood seeping from the corners of his mouth. Despite this, Yu didn't make a sound. He stood his ground stubbornly like a pillar, looking at the elder. He bared his teeth in a grimace and asked defiantly, his voice wavering. If I become the Hokage, what then? Seeing this, the elder fell silent for a while. He closed his eyes with a sense of lingering weariness, released the seal, and sneered. You won't become the Hokage. Even if you train until the end of your days, you'll be nothing more than an ordinary genin. You know that better than I do. If you want to die, then go ahead and try. The old man turned his back on the veranda and waved him off, finally leaving one last lonely remark. Don't say I didn't warn you. That old man Hyuga Sosuke is currently looking for clansmen who know medical ninjutsu. The pain of the caged bird came quickly and left just as fast. The more crucial reason was that this lonely old man, whom you had served for 10 years and lived with under the same roof, did not actually want him dead. Yu's face was pale. He swayed for a moment, looking at the back of the elder who had lost interest in the conversation. He remained silent for a while. He knew the man was actually trying to help him, but after enduring such humiliation, being treated like livestock with a leash around his neck, the words of gratitude simply wouldn't come out. Finally, he turned silently and walked toward the exit of the luxurious estate. Like a bird breaking free from a cage, he crossed the corridor, moved through the courtyard, and strode out of the prison he had lived in for 13 years. It was true. Everything the old man said was correct. Having lived in this world for 13 years, Yu understood with agonizing clarity. He had no talent as a shinobi. He had no innate, cheat code, or system. He certainly didn't have a prominent or noble status. It seemed he was born solely to be a servant to the main house, existing as a sparrow protected by a cage. However, even among sparrows in a cage, there will always be outliers who refuse to spend their lives bowing their heads to peck at grain. And Hyuga Yu was exactly that kind of outlier. If you wish to become a lion, you must first bow your head as a camel. This was something Hyuga Yu had heard in his previous life. It was said by Nietzsche. He claimed that humanity's most fundamental drives were the will to survive and the will to power. Built upon these, all social discipline, moral predicaments, and the oppression suffered by slaves were nothing but illusions. And if one wished to see through those illusions and break free of those predicaments, then first, one had to become a camel. You had to study, to master all kinds of knowledge, especially knowledge that could help you survive and grow strong. Yet all of this knowledge was wrapped in the trappings of slave morality. It told you how you should be. And at that stage, you were nothing more than a pitiful camel, a slave to knowledge. You carried it on your back, unable to use it. Instead, it became your shackles. Hyuga Yu had already been a camel for 13 years. So much time had passed that he was starting to forget what kind of life he had once hoped for when he first opened his eyes in this world 13 years ago. Was it to live as a shinobi, running freely across vast lands? Was it to uphold his own ninja way, to speak his mind and follow through in this hot-blooded manga-like world? Or was it simply because he had grown sick of his past life, of bending his back endlessly just to survive, fawning over one beer-bellied superior after another, exhausted from a life of constant bowing and scraping? Fate, however, played a cruel joke on Hyuga Yu. When he awoke from a drunken, hazy dream, he did indeed arrive in this world full of passion, friendship, and bonds. Only to become a member of the Hyuga branch family, the very opposite of hot-blooded. Lion-kun, hey, Lion-kun, what are you thinking about? The clear, lively voice snapped Hyuga Yu out of his thoughts. Through his lingering days, he saw a very pretty young girl, around 12 or 13 years old. She wore a neatly tailored gray kimono, with a pristine white maid outfit layered over it. The straps were decorated with petal-like ruffles. At that moment, her fair, delicate hand waved in front of Hyuga Yu's face. Following that motion, his gaze fell upon her features. A straight, elegant nose, softly flushed lips, long lashes that curled upward, and a pair of pale eyes filled with gentle warmth. Oh, it's Natsu. Hyuga Natsu. She was 1 year younger than Hyuga Yu, yet the two of them had been in the same class at the Ninja Academy. Like him, she was a member of the Hyuga branch family. Unlike him, however, her talent was outstanding. Her gentle fist, Byakugan, and 8 trigrams techniques, the Hyuga clan's 3 core arts, had progressed rapidly. Just last year, she advanced to Chunin alongside Obito Uchiha, Might Guy, and others. Soon after, she joined the main family's guard unit as both a protector and a maid, receiving a monthly stipend of 300,000 ryo. Incidentally, she would later become the personal bodyguard of the future Hyuga clan heir, Hanabi Hyuga. Based on the clan's requirements for such a position, Hyuga Yu estimated that by then, this branch family prodigy would be at least a jonin. Looking at this genius girl of the branch family, whose circumstances were utterly different from his own, Hyuga Yu smiled wryly and corrected her. I've told you already, don't keep calling me Lion-kun. My name is spelled Yu, it means dusk. The sun sinking in the west. He paused, recalling the implication behind what the clan elder had said earlier. His gaze darkened slightly. An ill-omened person. That's not true at all. Hyuga Natsu puffed out her cheeks and shook her head like a rattle drum. She immediately cut him off with a bright smile. Yu-kun, in my eyes, you've always been very brave. And besides, that nickname suits you perfectly. Back at the Ninja Academy, Yu-kun was dazzling, just like a lion. Hyuga Yu knew she was referring to the time he'd trained with Might Guy while wearing that green jumpsuit. The corner of his mouth twitched. Please spare me, Natsu. How did the thing I asked you to do go? Hyuga Natsu nodded. No problem. Young Master Genko is also very curious about you. And when it comes to medical ninjutsu, no one among our peers in the clan is better than you. Hyuga Genko. He was a member of a side branch connected to the main family. His father was Hyuga Sosuke, the elder who had delivered the message, and his cousins were Hiyashi Hyuga and Hazashi Hyuga of the main family. Hyuga Yu had come this time to join young Master Genko's guard unit as a medical nin. After refusing the commission letter from the clan elders, as a registered Konoha shinobi and a clan ninja of the Hyuga, Hyuga Yu would, barring any surprises, soon receive orders transferring him to the reconnaissance division and onto the battlefield of the Third Shinobi World War. Of course, even if you were just cannon fodder, there were still different ways to be thrown into the grinder. At this point, the battlefronts in the directions of the Land of Rivers, the Land of Rain, and the Land of Grass had already descended into utter bloodshed. All sides were fighting so fiercely they might as well have been trying to smash each other's brains out. A disposable genin like Hyuga Yu, once transferred there, would have less than a 10% chance of surviving a month. In contrast, the Hidden Mist Front, where clan shinobi would soon be mobilized, had only just seen the war begin. The overall intensity of the fighting was still relatively low. Moreover, once the crisis of the Byakugan's information leak was overcome, Kurigakure's main force, the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, would collide with Might Dai, who would burn his very life to open the 8 Gates Gate of Death. The mist's offensive would be dealt a devastating blow and slowed even further, dragging on until the war's end. On this battlefield, there were 3 key points Hyuga Yu needed to be mindful of. First, avoid the enemy's targeted hunts against the Hyuga main family. Second, steer clear of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Third, after the Hanabi Bridge incident erupted, make absolutely sure not to get caught up in the plot point where Kakashi Hatake killed Rin Nohara, leading to Obito Uchiha's descent into darkness. Based on cumulative military merit calculated from time survived on the battlefield. Once the war ended, Hyuga Yu would be awarded the rank of Chunin. Becoming a Chunin meant he would be qualified to form his own team and accept missions independently, enter the Ninja Academy system as an instructor, or serve in Konoha institutions such as the Interrogation Unit or the Reconnaissance Division. Although he would still, nominally, have to obey orders from the main family, at least with some distance, he wouldn't need to bow and kneel day after day, kowtowing at every turn. How should he put it? Distance makes things beautiful, something like that. And as long as he joined Hyuga Genko's guard unit, he could, through Genko's connections, avoid being sent straight into the frontline reconnaissance division. Instead, he could remain in the rear camps as a medical nin, quietly coasting by. It was a win-win. Hyuga Genko gained a clan medical nin stationed permanently at the rear. And Hyuga Yu gained a chance to survive the chaos of the battlefield. As for everything else, the fate of that main family heir who had drawn the attention of Kurigakure's hunter nin. The fate of Might Dai, who would clash with the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. The fate of his academy classmate Rin Nohara. Obito Uchiha's fall into darkness. Hyuga Yu knew his own strength was pitifully small. He could barely protect his own life, let alone change these major events locked into the main plot. As Hyuga Yu was lost in these thoughts, Hyuga Natsu looked at him with a troubled expression. Once again, his mind had drifted far away, completely ignoring her. She didn't understand why, ever since failing the Chunin exams, Hyuga Yu had been so weighed down by worry. But seeing him like this, she couldn't help clenching her fists. Then, she lifted her fair little face, met his eyes with her gentle Byakugan gaze, gathered her courage, and spoke earnestly. I've also been assigned to young Master Genko's guard unit this time. I'll be going to the battlefield with you. Yu-kun, I'll protect you. Hyuga Yu, snapped out of his reverie by those words, felt as though someone had smashed his forehead with a heavy hammer. He jolted fully awake. His eyes widened as he stared at the girl before him. His throat suddenly went unbearably dry. Wait, Natsu, what did you just say? I said I'll protect you. By now, Hyuga Yu had long since abandoned any fantasies of waking up with the Tensagen like some fanfiction protagonist, breaking the shackles of the caged bird curse, launching a coup d'état, rewriting the Hyuga clan's contradictory laws, marrying a busty Tsunade, and ascending to the throne of Hokage. 13 years inside the Hyuga clan had long since shown him the reality that differed from those fantasies. To be honest, apart from the few things about being forced to serve the main house, acting like a beast of burden, kowtowing and genuflecting, giving headlong obeisance, doing 90-degree bows and loudly chanting ridiculous phrases, which grated on him, the clan's material provisions really were without fault. They provided food and lodging, the village's orphan subsidy, the clan's secondary stipend, the elders' private third payment. None of them had ever been late even a single day. After adulthood they allocated housing, and the clan policy even included assigning wives. Besides the insanely expensive ninja scrolls, tools, and the instruction from high-level shinobi, which were naturally hard to obtain. The branch family's lives from cradle to grave were laid out and taken care of down to the smallest detail. That was the real reason the Hyuga's main branch versus branch system had persisted. The clan was genuinely wealthy, and they were willing to spend it. Under those conditions, no matter how much the branch families resented it, that discontent tended to stay confined to individuals and to the currently segregated batch of branch family members. But understanding didn't equal acceptance. Hyuga Yu did not have the habit of kowtowing to people or performing 90-degree bows while shouting, "Hontoni mashiwake gozaimasen, I am truly sorry." Even if he had to follow local customs, he could only accept a few superficial daily etiquettes at most. So even though he knew he lacked natural talent as a shinobi, he still wanted to become a chunin. He wanted to risk his life to stop being dependent on others, to stop kneeling and kowtowing. And yet, right now, standing before the prodigy girl from the branch family and faced with the absolute seriousness of her promise to him, Hyuga Yu suddenly went quiet. Hyuga Natsu was the wife the clan had assigned to him, his fiancée. No matter how he'd planned things, he hadn't expected that Natsu, who would later serve as Hanabi's personal maid, survive Pain's attack, and flee the Fourth Great Ninja War, would at this moment be joining him as part of the escort for the main house young master Hyuga Genko, and would go with him to the battlefield of the Third Great Ninja War. "What's wrong, Yu-kun? You look awful," she said. "Nothing." Hyuga Yu drew a deep breath, lifted his head, and smiled with narrowed eyes at the little lowly fiancé before him. "Yu-kun? Sounds so strange coming from you. Just call me Lion," he said. "Lion." Hyuga Natsu couldn't help a small snort of laughter. "If I call you that, it feels like I'm giggling." Hyuga Yu suddenly said, "I will protect you." Natsu froze at that, looked up, her long, curled lashes fluttering, a faint flush rose to her face. "What did you say? Let's go, Natsu. Please take me to see young Master Genko." Half an hour later, Hyuga Yu found himself in the reception room of the main house, facing the unlucky young master who would one day have his Byakugan stolen by Kurigakure. The main house young master, Hyuga Genko, appeared very young, around 18, dressed in a white kimono and with the standard Hyuga features, black hair, pale eyes, handsome features. Apart from the smooth forehead without a forehead protector, he looked like an adult version of Neji Hyuga. "You're Hyuga Yu," Genko said, holding a printed resume and making his appraisal of the boy sitting square-backed opposite him. "I've heard of you," he added. "You were a little one-sided in your academy grades?" he asked. "Yes." Hyuga Yu nodded. "In academics, you scored full marks in math, chemistry, and physics, and zeros in everything else. For ninja basics, apart from full marks in basic swordsmanship, you barely passed tool throwing, taijutsu, and body replacement technique, the rest you failed outright." Hyuga Genko flipped through the resume and asked, "Why such a skewed profile?" Hyuga Yu answered immediately, "Because I trained taijutsu with the Might Guy father and son, and I also went to Konoha Hospital to learn the basics of medical ninjutsu." Genko frowned slightly, then asked again, "Why train under the Might Guy family for Konoha's strong fist? Isn't the clan's gentle fist stronger than that inferior taijutsu?" Yu did not dare be careless and replied at once, "I've learned both strong fist and gentle fist. Strong fist is simply better at conditioning the body, it can help speed up the process of activating the Byakugan." When Genko heard that his concern was about activating the Byakugan, his expression softened. In school, two types of people were memorable: geniuses at the top of the ranks, and pathetic tail-enders. A tail-ender from one of Konoha's leading clans was even more conspicuous. Genko had heard rumors about Hyuga Yu's lack of natural talent. His chakra reserves were meager, barely qualifying him as an ordinary shinobi, let alone as a Hyuga. Activating the Byakugan requires far greater chakra reserves for Hyuga clan members than it does for ordinary ninjas. Once he realized Yu's strange behavior in the academy was all to open his Byakugan, Hyuga Genko gave him a sidelong look and respected the boy's determination. Before this, including Genko himself, many in the clan hadn't believed you could awaken the Byakugan within 3 years of graduation. Yet unexpectedly, at last year's Chunin exams, he truly had opened the Byakugan early and stood all the way to the final ring. Although even Obito Uchiha at the time, another tail ender, hadn't won. Genko continued, so you learned medical ninjutsu during your academy years. What medical techniques can you do? D-rank chakra recovery technique, chakra needle and thread, C-rank surface suturing, B-rank fine lesion extraction, you answered. Not bad. Genko nodded and offered a smile. With that talent, having opened the Byakugan and learned so many medical techniques, Hyuga you've worked hard. As a reconnaissance ninja you're still lacking, he added, but as a medical ninja you're quite competent, and you just happen to fill a gap our clan lacks. He thought for a moment, then, remembering the message the main house elder had sent, arranged, I will report this to the main branch. From now on, the clan will cultivate you more toward the medical ninja track. When the village issues deployment orders, I'll arrange for you to be placed in a rear camp to study with the medical ninja stationed there. Hyuga Genko closed the resume and looked at the lowered-headed youth before him. Any objections? Hyuga suddenly lifted his head, his expression serious. Yes. I apply to go on missions with the unit, to be part of your escort. Genko's brows tightened. He snapped the resume shut and tossed it on the table with a slap, looking at him coldly. I said, as a reconnaissance ninja, you are not qualified. Hyuga raised his chin, beneath heavy bangs his pale eyes shone with stubborn light. He insisted, I can. Please leave. Master Genko, I still have. I will make arrangements regarding your affairs. For now, please leave. Hyuga proposal was mercilessly rejected. This young master of the main house didn't even give him a chance to prove himself before standing up to dismiss him. His attitude was exceptionally firm. Hyuga could understand why he was doing this. Hyuga Genko was entering the battlefield of the Third Great Ninja War to set an example as a member of the main house. His goal was to bridge the rift that had formed between the main and branch houses years ago after Hyuga Hazashi was demoted to the branch house. While there was certainly an element of showmanship involved, whether it was to prevent the Byakugan from falling into enemy hands or to ensure the safety of the few existing main house members, what he needed were reliable branch house guards. Hyuga was merely a genin who couldn't even perform the gentle fist, 8 trigrams 32 palms. Compared to other genin, he had merely learned a few extra medical ninjutsu. In Genko's eyes, Yu was nothing but a burden, not even sturdy enough to serve as a human shield. This was reality. However, only Hyuga knew just how thorny the situation facing this main house young master would be. The Byakugan theft incident was not simple. There were strict confidentiality regulations among ninja. Intelligence regarding a main house member entering the battlefield was classified as top secret within the Hyuga clan. Hyuga knew because a main house elder had indirectly informed him, while Hyuga Natsu knew the details only because she had been assigned to the escort squad herself. Furthermore, it was certain that main house members were safe within Konoha village and at the frontline camps. After all, the main house only needed to show their stance. Naturally, they wouldn't actually execute overly dangerous missions. Once they arrived at the frontline camp, the main house members would be heavily protected. Therefore, the only opportunity for the enemy to strike was during the few days the main house squad spent traveling from Konoha to the allied frontline camp. And this meant, the intelligence that the main house was about to enter the battlefield had, in reality, already been leaked. This was a premeditated hunt targeting the Byakugan. The hunters in the open were the Mist Anbu led by Ao of the Hidden Mist, while the hunters in the shadows were inside the village. Hyuga didn't quite understand why intelligence of this level would leak, nor did he want to guess. But now that the path to directly joining Hyuga Genko's escort squad was blocked, according to confidentiality regulations, as one of the insiders, his departure from the village would likely be staggered from the main house squads, delaying his exit. If he couldn't move with the squad, he couldn't protect Hyuga Natsu up close, nor could he avoid the missed ambush by influencing the squad's route. Even more troublesome was that he wouldn't even know which route the main house squad was taking. At that moment, standing outside the main house mansion, Hyuga Yu stood with a dark expression, thinking for a while. Suddenly, he turned around without hesitation and headed toward the Fire Country Bank branch within Konoha village. The Fire Country Bank was built right next to the Hokage residence. This was convenient for Konoha ninja to walk a few steps and deposit their money after completing missions and earning their remuneration. The 5 great nations of the ninja world each had different currencies. The Land of Fire used a coin with the Fire Daimyo's head on the front and the Konoha village symbol on the back. Additionally, there was a universal currency relying on the banking industry that allowed for circulation. At this time, Hyuga Yu walked straight to a counter. "Hello, I would like a loan." "A loan?" The young female teller behind the counter paused, then reminded him. "It is currently wartime. Our bank is temporarily not accepting unsecured loans for ninja." "Understood." Hyuga Yu nodded. He untied the small, tightly bound bag clenched in his hand and took out documents one by one, handing them over. "This is my property deed, ninja identification, and passbook." "Hyuga Yu, you are a member of the Hyuga clan?" "Yes. This is the house left by my parents. The current market value is 1.32 million ryo. I want a loan of 1 million ryo." "One moment." The teller took the materials, buried her head in calculations using the calculator beside her for a while, and soon looked up with a slightly apologetic expression. "Because Iwagakure occupied Hanabi Bridge recently, the safety assessment value for the Fire Country's borders has decreased. According to current market trends, the mortgage rate for commercial residential properties within Konoha village is only 50% to 60%, depending on the location. Since the apartment you provided is located on the edge of the Hyuga clan grounds, our bank can offer you the highest mortgage rate, but we can only approve a loan with a limit of 800,000 ryo." Hearing this, Hyuga Yu couldn't help but fall silent. It was currently Konoha year 49. The situation on the Rain Country front was anxious, and the overall war situation was unfavorable for Konoha. The Hanabi Bridge mentioned by the teller was located in the Land of Grass to the northwest of the Land of Fire. It had previously been a vital supply route for Konoha. Its seizure by the Hidden Stone caused market fluctuations and a drop in investor confidence. This situation would likely persist until next year, when the Kakashi team led by Minato Namikaze destroyed Hanabi Bridge. "Hyuga Yu, do you still want a loan?" The young female teller looked up at Hyuga Yu's tender face, lowered her voice, quietly raised a hand to cover the corner of her mouth, and whispered a reminder. "If you don't need the money urgently, you can wait a few years. The market will probably be much better by then." Hyuga Yu shook his head. "No need. Please process the paperwork." The teller meant that after the Great Ninja War ended and mission quotas were redistributed among the major ninja villages, ninja who relied on missions for income wouldn't be so tight on cash. But Hyuga Yu wasn't tight on cash right now. He actually had 200,000 ryo in savings. He had another use for this money. Soon. Current deposit: 1 million ryo. Looking at the balance displayed on the passbook, Hyuga Yu took a deep breath, closed the passbook, walked out of the bank, turned, and entered the Hokage residence next door. He went all the way to the slightly deserted mission assignment desk on the second floor. At this time, due to the outbreak of the Third Great Ninja War, the volume of village missions had dropped sharply, and the originally busy mission assignment desk had become quiet. Inside the office, only a clerk wearing a Chunin flak jacket and thick glasses sat alone behind a desk, yawning. Hyuga Yu walked straight over and spoke. "Hello, I want to issue a mission." Hearing the voice, the Chunin clerk looked up. Seeing Hyuga Yu's white eyes, he was somewhat surprised. Issuing a mission at a time like this? Huh, are you a ninja of the Hyuga clan? Correct. What rank of mission do you want to issue? S rank. The clerk's eyes widened slightly. S rank, are you sure? The minimum remuneration for a mission of that level is 1 million ryo. Hyuga Yu slammed the passbook onto the table, opened it, and showed the number to the other party. The Chunin clerk took the passbook and glanced at it. The expression on his face became visibly attentive. He hurriedly took out a scroll, paper, and pen from the desk and asked impatiently. What is the content of the mission you wish to issue? Hyuga Yu said in a deep voice. I am looking for a ninjutsu. I need the corresponding ninjutsu scroll, or for a ninja who has mastered this ninjutsu to teach it personally. Hearing this, the Chunin clerk felt slightly astonished and couldn't help but look at Hyuga Yu again to confirm. Everyone knew that the Hyuga clan, possessing the Byakugan Kekkei Genkei, had secret techniques in nintaijutsu unique to their clan. They basically didn't dabble in other ninjutsu, let alone pay such a huge price to purchase one. However, what was up with this boy? Apologies, may I ask your name? Hyuga Yu. Hearing this, the Chunin clerk couldn't help but look at Hyuga Yu again. Remembering some rumors about this name, his expression became a bit strange. Hyuga Yu, you are that, ahem, then what is the ninjutsu you wish to commission a search for? Hyuga Yu took a deep breath and said solemnly. Wind Style. Vacuum Blade. AB rank Wind Style Ninjutsu. Its effect is to infuse Wind Style chakra into a kunai, forming a sharp sword. Its characteristics are extremely low consumption, very few ninja who have mastered it, and extremely high learning difficulty. Although ninjutsu is not strictly classified by rank regarding consumption, placing more importance on how much chakra the ninja inputs, under conditions of equal input, high-ranking ninjutsu will undoubtedly consume relatively more chakra than low-ranking ninjutsu due to their complexity. But there are exceptions. Wind Style. Vacuum Blade is this type of ninjutsu. Although it is AB rank ninjutsu, it is classified as such mostly due to the difficulty of learning it. In terms of sheer consumption, it is lower than most C-rank ninjutsu. This is determined by the form of the technique. This technique combines the shape transformation of Wind Style with a strong adhesion effect on ninja tools. The so-called strong adhesion effect is similar to the state Asuma Sarutobi would demonstrate to Naruto in the future when explaining Wind Style, infusing Wind Style chakra into a chakra blade and throwing it to pierce through a tree. Normally, achieving that effect requires a considerably high level of training in Wind Style nature transformation, and the ninja tool must be made of special chakra metal. This is why, despite the technique not looking particularly flashy and its power not appearing overwhelmingly strong, it is classified as B rank. But for Hyuga Yu, who possessed very little chakra, this was the most suitable ninjutsu. The three great assets of the Hyuga clan. The Byakugan, the Gentle Fist, and the 8 trigrams. Their principles are actually interconnected. They all rely on the Byakugan's ability to see the chakra pathway system and the flow of chakra, releasing chakra continuously or in large quantities from the Tenketsu chakra points to form the nintaijutsu unique to the Hyuga clan, the unreplicable Gentle Fist style. The prerequisite for achieving this is based on the Hyuga clansman having a chakra volume slightly higher than that of an ordinary ninja. Example. Adult Kakashi has a stamina stat of 6, while Neji has 7. However, for Hyuga Yu, just maintaining the consumption of the Byakugan during battle was already quite difficult. It was impossible to allocate his remaining chakra to the continuous Gentle Fist and 8 trigrams, which required large amounts of chakra. During last year's Chunin exams, it was precisely because he forcibly used the Gentle Fist art, 8 trigrams 32 palms and crashed halfway through that he suffered a regrettable defeat. However, his 13 years of buried study were not useless. Hyuga Yu had planned his own growth path a long time ago. The scarcity of his chakra determined that he could only follow the route of a concise and efficient ninja. His battles often had to end in an instant or within a very short period. Therefore, he shifted his personal focus to taijutsu, ninja tools, and medical ninjutsu, pairing them with the Byakugan to construct a combat system that belonged solely to him. And now, what was missing to complete the final link of this combat system was precisely this wind-style ninjutsu, vacuum blade. Hyuga Yu did not originally intend to acquire this ninjutsu in this manner. Instead, he had planned to create a slightly weaker C-rank version himself after deepening his training in wind-style nature and shape transformation. After all, the price of obtaining it was somewhat too heavy. But plans can never keep up with changes. Things having reached this point, in order to protect his fiancée, Hyuga Natsu, and to face the battlefield he was about to step onto, Hyuga Yu had no choice but to take this step ahead of schedule. Yes, wind style is a rare affinity among the ninja population, and within this extremely small group of ninja, as far as Hyuga Yu knew, there was only one person in the entire Hidden Leaf village who had mastered the ninjutsu wind style, vacuum blade. Danzo Shimura. Thinking for a moment and clearing his head, Hyuga Yu walked out of the Hokage residence after posting his mission. He identified his bearings and then ran non-stop toward the Konoha training grounds. If one were to unfold Konoha like a fan, the Konoha training grounds were located in the fifth ring of this massive semicircle, adjacent to the perimeter walls and forest surrounding the village. The supporting ninja tool shops, blacksmiths, and hardware wholesale markets were all located in this area. It would take some time for the intelligence regarding the S-rank mission Hyuga Yu had posted to ferment and be passed into the hands of various factions. P.S. It does not essentially reach the level of S-rank. Normally it would be listed as an A-rank mission, but since this is a special period, it has been exceptionally listed as S-rank for various reasons. Taking advantage of this time, Hyuga Yu arrived in this area to pick up a secret weapon he had been preparing for a long time. At this time, the streets outside the Konoha training grounds were quite lively, filled everywhere with ninja buying tools or repairing equipment. Hyuga Yu moved through the crowd, lifted the door curtain, and walked into a large ninja tool shop. The young apprentice responsible for running errands and entertaining guests inside the shop immediately perked up upon observing Hyuga Yu's white eyes. He welcomed him eagerly. "Welcome, guest. How may I help you?" Hyuga Yu glanced at the other party. Seeing the boy wearing a sky-pointing ponytail and round-framed glasses, clearly a fresh face he hadn't seen before, he said, "I am here to pick up a custom-made ninja tool." The apprentice immediately trotted to the counter, found the scroll recording custom tool orders, and flipped through several volumes. He couldn't find the surname, Hyuga, anywhere. He looked up somewhat consistently, his small face blushing as he asked, "Guest, may I ask when you placed the order?" "Not that book." Hyuga Yu shook his head and pointed to a scroll pressed at the very bottom of the counter. "Look there. 8 years ago, a Ninja Academy student named Hyuga Yu ordered a ninja tool at this shop." 8 years ago. Hearing this, the apprentice was stunned. 8 years ago, he hadn't even been born yet. And this Hyuga youth before him was probably only 6 or 7 years old back then, right? What kind of ninja tool takes 8 whole years to forge? And how much effect could a tool forged for a 6 or 7-year-old child 8 years ago still have now? Please wait a moment. Realizing this was a major matter, the apprentice didn't dare to neglect it and hurriedly began to search. Just then, a rough voice came from the backyard blacksmith workshop. "Shoseki, what are you doing dilly-dallying? Where is the ore I asked you to get?" "Yes." The apprentice called Shoseki looked up immediately upon hearing the voice. "Teacher Io, I'm coming right now." "Too slow, too slow. Also, haven't you eaten? Give me a bit more spirit. How can such a weak voice forge powerful ninja tools?" As the voice rang out, a black-haired old man with a Mediterranean-style balding head poked his head out from behind the curtain of the inner room. Upon seeing Hyuga Yu standing in the shop, Io blinked. He felt like he had seen this youth somewhere before, but the image didn't seem to match up perfectly. This young brother looks so familiar. Seeing him, Hyuga Yu immediately smiled faintly and greeted him. Master Io, it has been a long time. Io. This man was Konoha's premier ninja tool artisan. 8 years ago, Hyuga Yu had spent 100,000 ryo to commission him to forge a unique ninja tool. Oh, I remember now. You're that kid from the Hyuga family. I watched your matches during the Chunin exams last year. Your ninja tool techniques were brilliant, it's just a pity. Io finally recognized Hyuga Yu and showed a look of realization. But quickly thinking of something, he hurriedly shut his mouth and revealed an embarrassed expression. Sorry, it's nothing. Hyuga Yu shook his head indifferently. He had only awakened his Byakugan the year before last, and his mastery of medical ninjutsu and gentle fist acupoint striking was only at a beginner level. Chunin aren't as common as cabbage. To be able to advance to the final tournament stage under those circumstances was already considered dumb luck. However, things were different now. Thinking of this, Hyuga Yu looked directly at Io before him and asked straight away. Master Io, how is the crafting of that ninja tool I ordered coming along? Looking at the youth in front of him, Io immediately remembered the special ninja tool commissioned 8 years ago. His spirit rose involuntarily, and he laughed proudly. That tool has been completed. Last year it was still undergoing the final process, so it couldn't be put to use. I am truly sorry about that. Saying so, he beckoned to Hyuga Yu, signaling for him to follow him to the backyard. Follow me. It definitely won't disappoint you. Following Io, Hyuga Yu quickly passed through the workshop in the backyard used for forging ninja tools and arrived at the showroom where the master kept his collection. As they walked, Io sighed with emotion. I really didn't expect that in this day and age, there would still be a ninja thinking about using this kind of weapon. To the side, Shoseki tilted his head, a bit confused, but hung excitedly behind Io and Hyuga Yu. He seemed eager to see what this ninja tool, which had taken 8 years to craft, actually looked like. At this, Hyuga Yu shook his head and said, although it isn't made of precious materials, the manufacturing process is extremely tedious. It has to balance the sturdiness required for close quarters combat with the flexibility needed for use. Thinking about it, in the entire Hidden Leaf, only you, Master Io, could craft such a tool. After all, it is a weapon eliminated by the times. Haha, only an old stubborn fool like me would be willing to make this kind of toy. I'll accept your praise. Io let out a loud laugh, took out a key, and opened the door to the showroom, leading Hyuga Yu inside. Inside the rather spacious showroom, a uniquely shaped ninja tool was displayed on the shelves every meter. Ninja swords, iron staffs, cleavers, steel wires, tonfas, chain staffs, iron chains, explosive tags, spiked iron balls, giant chained iron balls, fuma shuriken, blast spheres. All sorts of common and uncommon ninja tools were displayed there. If open to the public, it could even serve as a small museum of ninja tools. Soon, the three of them reached the end of the showroom. Io lifted a massive wooden box, 2.5 meters long, down from the innermost shelf. He opened the wooden box. Inside lay a large Japanese bow, Yumi, taller than Hyuga Yu himself. The bow was about 2.2 meters long overall, asymmetrical with the upper part long and the lower part short, similar in form to the hama Yumi used in countryside rituals. It was made entirely of maruki wood, with white gohei streamers adorning the ends. Several key parts, such as the upper curve nodes, the grip nodes, and the Heimzerreiher curve nodes, were fitted with modules that could be activated by chakra. If encountered with close quarters combat, matching iron bow plates could be slotted into grooves, allowing it to be used to whip people. Though generally, doing so is not recommended. Io took out the bow and proudly showed his apprentice, Shoseki, the 4 characters for crafted by Io, inscribed on the limb. He then looked at Hyuga Yu and explained. This bow has a draw weight of 150 pounds. The effective range is within 150 meters, with a maximum limit of 300 meters. It isn't heavy, but it is very long, making it quite troublesome to carry. Furthermore, it can only use hemp strings. Arrows fired with this kind of draw weight, well, it's very difficult to recover and reuse them. Hyuga Yu nodded and estimated, in other words, it will be scrapped after about 100 to 200 shots. Exactly. Using tanned elastic ninja wire is an alternative, but it affects the handling of the bow. Since you commissioned this specific type of bow, you should understand that, right? Hyuga Yu nodded. The Japanese bow has a specialized shooting technique. The hand holding the bow must master the vibration amplitude of the bow when the arrow is released, predict the reaction force generated by the difference in length between the upper and lower limbs, and use this reaction force to calculate the arrow's launch direction and the amount of force applied. As long as one can properly utilize this reaction force, the trajectory of the fired arrow can undergo various changes, such as controlling the range or the parabolic arc. Therefore, only specially made hemp strings can be used. In other words, this weapon takes a long time to build, has high maintenance costs, and the bowstring has a short lifespan. Coupled with the fact that the explosive speed of ninjas during combat is comparable to a locomotive. Once a battle starts, the distance between both sides closes rapidly. Bows and arrows quickly lose their effectiveness and can even become a burden. Thus, the bow and arrow became the tears of the era. In the entire history of the ninja world, one could barely find anyone named who used a bow, perhaps only Kitamura, who was beaten to death by Neji Hyuga. For ordinary ninjas, having the time to practice with such a thankless tool would be better spent practicing the body flicker technique. However, if one adds the Byakugan, which starts with a visual range of 1 kilometer, and the wind style, vacuum blade, which can be attached to ninja tools to increase range and enhance penetration power, then everything changes completely. With this thought in mind, Hyuga Yu took the bow, his heart filling with anticipation. Of course, the path of bow Byakugan weapon-infused nature transformation was just a concept he had calculated based on his knowledge. The actual combat effectiveness still required concrete testing. Moreover, the jutsu wind style, vacuum blade was currently non-existent for him. Although he had decided to make contact with Danzo Shimura, whether Danzo would accept him, a member of the Hyuga branch family, was another matter entirely. Hyuga Yu's current positioning was very awkward. Unlike Might Guy, who tried to join the route for Kakashi's sake but was rejected on the grounds that, there is absolutely no darkness in your heart, you belong to the completely opposite extreme. Although Hyuga Yu was momentarily filled with ambition and had a very spirited desire to live a significant life, he ultimately still bore the caged bird seal on his forehead. In a substantial sense, he was already considered a dog of the Hyuga family. At any time, he could be forced by the main family to leak intelligence. Given Danzo's character, suspicious, cautious, trusting no one, not even his own subordinates, and only daring to use people after branding them with a cursed seal, it was likely, very difficult for him to accept you. But then again, people's thoughts differ vastly at different stages of life. Just like how children always want to be adults, but adults always envy the time spent playing in the mud as children. And Danzo Shimura, who was stuck in an even more awkward period than Hyuga Yu right now, might just hold his nose and convince himself. While Hyuga Yu was preparing to step onto the battlefield on one side, the S-rank mission intelligence posted by Hyuga Yu quickly began to ferment on the other, being prioritized for delivery to the Jonin Council, the Anbu, and their subsidiary organizations. Setting aside whether the mission grading was reasonable, simply looking at the content of the mission release, some sharp-minded and well-informed ninjas had already sensed the incongruity of this task. Wind style, vacuum blade. Currently, only 2 people in the entire Hidden Leaf village knew this ninjutsu. One was the 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, known as the Professor of Ninjutsu, who had mastered over 1,000 techniques. The second was the high-ranking official of Konoha, leader of the route, and one of the Hokage's advisors, Danzo Shimura. Between the two, it was obviously Danzo Shimura who was more proficient in this technique. Or rather, this was precisely the secret wind style ninjutsu of the Shimura clan. Similar ninjutsu existed, of course, such as the Shirakumo clan's hereditary wind style, vacuum sword, the wind style, shuriken techniques mastered by some small ninja clans, or the Sarutobi clan's wind style, verdant mountain gale, all of which possessed similar effects. But this mission specifically named and required wind style, vacuum blade. What this implied inevitably led some people to indulge in wild fantasies. However, before the intelligence could spread to a wider range, and just as the mission delegation process reached the Hokage's desk, the few ninjas paying attention to the matter were stunned to discover the mission had been taken down. And very quickly, all documents related to the mission process, recorded files, and even the intelligence regarding the employer Hyuga Yu's appearance at the Hokage residence were wiped clean. It was as if this mission had never existed. In a bottomless chasm, a steel bridge connected the abyss's rocky walls to the four cardinal directions. In the center stood a steel tower built into the earth, resembling a water intake tower at a dam. This was the organization known as the Hidden Leaf Anbu Training Division. Root. At this moment, inside an office located within the high-level quarters of the underground tower, two figures stood before a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the darkness. One was an old man with spiky black hair, neat sideburns, and bandages wrapping his head and right eye. His face was gloomy and heavily wrinkled. He was currently reading an unfurled scroll. When his gaze fell upon the glaring word, Hyuga, in the employer column, he couldn't help but frown slightly. This man was none other than the leader of Root, the man known as the Darkness of the Ninja World. Danzo Shimura, and the scroll in his hand was the very mission commission form that Hyuga Yu had signed in the Hokage residence not long ago. Hyuga Yu, this old man remembers. This brat was already on the observation list. Danzo glanced at Ryoma Aburame, who stood to the side, his entire body shrouded in a hooded cloak and wearing black sunglasses. Danzo commented indifferently, born of humble origins, harboring resentment in his heart. It is a pity, however, that he is merely a sparrow with mediocre aptitude. Beside him, Ryoma Aburame nodded. Indeed, the Chunin exams have already proven that his potential is nothing special. But if you ask why, the reason is that, now, this sparrow has come to us on his own initiative. He seems to have sensed our surveillance of him, and furthermore, he proactively proposed conditions to you. HMPH. Danzo couldn't help but sneer, his laughter cold and sinister. Since becoming the Hokage's assistant and establishing Root, people had avoided him as if he were a scorpion or a viper for so many years, wishing they could stay 3 miles away. This was the first time he had encountered such a bold brat. How should we handle this? Ryoma Aburame also felt a bit surprised. He reached out a finger to adjust his sunglasses and said, "The strategic significance of the Byakugan is major. Even if this brat is just a mediocre Hyuga branch house genin, he possesses considerable value to us." It is just that, Ryoma Aburame's words came to an abrupt halt, and Danzo Shimura understood the implication behind his words. The caged bird cursed seal remained an unavoidable issue. A member of the Hyuga branch house branded with the caged bird was, in a practical sense, a slave to the main house. Everything about the branch house, intelligence, bonds, wealth, power, status, all of it was controlled by the main house, to be taken or given at their whim. Under such circumstances, if Root were to recruit Hyuga Yu, even branding him with the cursed tongue eradication seal would make it difficult to ensure that intelligence would not leak. And for shinobi, especially for the countless Root shinobi lurking in the shadows cast by the giant tree that was Konoha, intelligence was life. Danzo couldn't help but furrow his brow, pinching his chin as he fell into thought. At this time, Danzo Shimura and the Root organization he commanded were in a period of rapid expansion in strength. Due to 2 successive great ninja wars, Danzo had used the excuse of making up for flaws in the intelligence system to obtain special privileges from the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. He was granted the authority to act as he saw fit and to recruit a large number of personnel independent of the standard Anbu. Currently, the number of shinobi en route, both on the surface and hidden, actually exceeded that of the Anbu directly under the Hokage. However, such a massive organization had an extremely significant flaw: a singular structure, or to put it more bluntly, there were too few powerhouses. Those who could be called powerhouses were only Danzo Shimura, Ryoma Aburame, and Orochimaru of the Sannin, who listened to orders but not propaganda. The personnel below the high command were basically composed of civilian shinobi absorbed from the Anbu and the Ninja Academy. The future elites with unique characteristics, Kakashi Hatake, Tenzo, Fuyama Naka, Torun Aburame, Shin, Sai, and others, were either not born yet, currently under the command of the third Hokage, or still soaking in Orochimaru's laboratories. To solve this problem, Danzo Shimura had already proposed to the third Hokage that he recruit qualified children from the various major clans of Konoha for training. The third Hokage had agreed to this point, but with a smile, he required Danzo himself to negotiate with the various clans. Clearly, the major clans of Konoha did not approve of Root's ideology, nor were they willing to hand over their own children to Danzo to be brainwashed into unfeeling tools who disowned their own families. Every one of them guarded against Danzo Shimura like they were guarding against a thief. Danzo had visited their homes several times. The results were either having the doors slammed in his face, the clan head claiming to be out on business, or the eligible children in the clan suddenly contracting incurable diseases that made them unable to serve elder Danzo. Even the relatively close Aburame clan used the excuse that there were no children with suitable aptitude in the current generation to decline Danzo. The current Danzo did not lack cannon fodder, spies, or grassroots shinobi. What he wanted were elite shinobi capable of standing on their own. He wanted what ordinary people considered geniuses. Or rather, Danzo Shimura, who aimed for the position of Hokage, wanted elites who could directly rival the specifications of the Hokage Guard platoon. Hyuga Yu, who was just a large piece of cannon fodder, obviously did not meet this criterion. But, if used as a stepping stone, this brat barely qualifies. Danzo mused to himself, then turned his head to make a decision. He took out a cyan scroll stamped with the Shimura clan crest from his robes and tossed it to Ryoma Aburame, speaking expressionlessly. Absorb that brat as a root peripheral member. Peripheral member. Ryoma Aburame couldn't help but pause, a strange look appearing on his face hidden beneath the hood. Danzo stared indifferently at Ryoma Aburame and said, "Do not reveal any intelligence to him. Do not let him participate in any missions regarding Root's operations, and do not give him any training regarding Root's plans." Speaking up to this point, Danzo paused, his tone turning slightly colder. "But, utilize that pair of eyes. Make him offer up everything to water the roots of Konoha." With that said, Danzo Shimura turned and returned to his desk to sit down, continuing to deal with the mountain of intelligence files and the majority of the tedious official documents that Hiruzen Sarutobi had thrown his way. The incident with Hyuga Yu was nothing more than a small interlude for Danzo, who had aspirations for the Hokage seat. This method of handling it was merely a fleeting thought that had occurred to Danzo by chance. Perhaps it would be useful, perhaps useless. But since the decision was made, Danzo would no longer care about the process, only the final result. The gap in status between the two sides was like a massive chasm. It was like flicking away a small bug that had crawled onto one's sleeve. Hyuga Yu's destiny began to turn. But as the saying goes, the leader moves his lips, and the subordinates run their legs off. Facing Danzo's impromptu decision regarding a root peripheral member, Ryoma Aburame immediately felt a headache the size of a bucket. He couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth bitterly, thinking to himself, "I can't do this, I can't do that, yet I have to perfectly utilize his Byakugan without letting that brat come into contact with any root operational intelligence. How am I supposed to arrange this brat? But soon, Ryoma Aburame suddenly thought of a post that seemed to perfectly meet Danzo's requirements. The research on the Zero Tails project left behind by the second Hokage has entered a bottleneck. The project team was dismantled by Orochimaru. Currently, all the members are holding idle positions. I could actually have this brat join Tanuki Shigaraki's squad. Yu Hyuga walked out of the ninja tool shop carrying a 2.5-meter long bow case diagonally across his back, stepping onto the road home. Inside the massive case, in addition to the Jontumibo forged with sulfur, there were 3 hemp strings, 50 arrows, and the corresponding quiver, finger guard, and arm guard accessories. Carrying such an exaggeratedly large box through the streets was quite conspicuous. Along the way, you could faintly hear passing ninja pointing and whispering about him. Whoa, what kind of ninja tool is that kid carrying? Even a Fuma shuriken isn't that big, is it? Huh, isn't that the Hyuga family freak, Yu Hyuga? Who is Yu Hyuga? Hey, a walking disaster. Keep your voice down, don't let him pick you as a teammate. He was a weird kid back in the academy. Instead of learning the Hyuga clan's secret techniques like he should, he spent all his time practicing strong fist with that eternal genin, Might Dai, and his son. It's a pity his aptitude was so poor that even Might Dai didn't want him. After becoming a genin, 2 of his teammates died, one after the other. Every time, he's the weakest one, yet he's the one who survives. It's like he all the luck out of his teammates. Now, I guess he knows that practicing ninjutsu or taijutsu is useless for him, so he's switched to practicing weapon throwing, which doesn't require chakra. Haha, no wonder they say he's the disgrace of the Hyuga clan. Listening to the rustling whispers along the way, words of pity, ridicule, or jealousy drifting past his ears, Yu's gaze darkened slightly. He did not argue, he simply quickened his pace, swiftly leaving the vicinity of the Konoha training grounds. The dark clouds of war already loomed over the hidden leaf. After leaving the training grounds, the road became increasingly desolate. There were few pedestrians stopping on the streets. The scattered few villagers he brushed past all wore heavy expressions and walked in a hurry. Shops had ceased operations, and entertainment venues were closed. Only the areas around the Konoha hospital and the training grounds were more congested than usual. Soon, the sun began to set. After traveling to several locations in a single day and doing everything possible to prepare for war, Yu returned to the vicinity of the Hyuga clan grounds. He had 2 places of residence. One was a side room for servants within the residence of the main house elder, Hyuga Takahiro. The other was a cramped apartment on the edge of the Hyuga district, left to him by his parents in this life. Having rejected the elder's letter of appointment, Yu had effectively terminated his employment with him. Therefore, he could now only return to that narrow, cramped little apartment. Fortunately, although the apartment was small, it gave Yu a unique sense of security. However, just as he was about to step into the Hyuga clan grounds, walking along the road, Yu suddenly sensed a gaze hidden in the shadows of the street, peering directly at him. Yu's heart instantly went cold. In the early stages, when he was extremely weak and could only rely on the Kekkei Genkei, the Byakugan, as his core ability, Yu had become exceptionally sensitive to the gaze of others. One could even say that this was the very reliance that had allowed him, a cannon fodder genin, to survive until now after personally participating in the Third Great Ninja War for 2 years, while essentially all his teammates had died. It was an extremely acute tactile sense regarding the abstract concept of a gaze. The human eye's field of view is generally 180 degrees horizontally and 135 degrees vertically. When looking straight ahead, the range of clear vision is about 120 degrees, while peripheral vision can perceive about 60 degrees on either side. Looking up covers generally 60 degrees, and looking down covers about 75 degrees. The Byakugan, however, has a field of view of 360 degrees. Even for a branch house member like you, the field of view was 359 degrees. Moreover, this was a global vision that came with innate X-ray capabilities and a godlike perspective. This meant that even standing behind an enemy, you could use his X-ray vision to see the rotation of the enemy's eyeballs, thereby judging which direction the enemy was looking. Theoretically, as long as he properly utilized this line of sight difference, you could stay constantly behind an enemy in close quarters combat, achieving a unique invisibility effect. That's right, this was the invisibility jutsu created by the genius protagonist in prison in the movie 3 Iron. After mastering this ability and combining it with the standard 3-body technique used by ninja, Yu's survivability on the battlefield had instantly risen by more than just a single tier. Just like right now, the sensitive Yu instantly discerned that this gaze looking at him carried a killing intent. It was sinister and decisive, just like the gaze he had encountered on the battlefield, one devoid of personal emotion, a gaze that sought to strip away an enemy's life solely to complete a mission. A murderous gaze. Yu didn't understand where this killing intent came from, nor did he know who had the audacity to plan to kill him right near the Hyuga clan grounds. Upon detecting this gaze, he did not immediately activate his Byakugan. Instead, relying on the instincts honed on the battlefield, he continued to walk forward. His toes turned slightly, and sticking to the right side of the street, he walked into the shadow cast by a building under the setting sun. The gaze quickly followed Yu's figure, shifting its angle. Using the shift in this tactile sense, Yu quickly reverse-engineered the opponent's position. Directly ahead and to the right, behind the eaves of a wooden 2-story house. Approaching the Hyuga clan territory, most of the buildings were this type of quaint, Japanese-style architecture. Gray tiles, white walls, and wooden structures, overall quite majestic, but correspondingly, they created many blind spots. Yu's expression remained calm and composed. When he was about 50 meters from the opponent's position, he suddenly turned his body sideways, wedging himself between the building's shadow and a utility pole. From the perspective of the enemy hiding in the dark, it looked as if Yu had suddenly noticed something posted on the utility pole, felt a hint of interest, and circled halfway around to take a closer look. The large wooden case on his back, the utility pole, and the shadows and blind spots of the building combined to obscure Yu's face. And then, Byakugan, activate. The meridians around his eyes instantly bulged and filled with blood. His colorful vision instantly turned gray and white. Then, expand, expand. As his vision enveloped the surrounding 1-kilometer radius, he clearly saw the face of the ninja secretly watching him. The opponent wore a cat face mask with only 2 whiskers and was draped in a light yellow hooded cloak that concealed his entire figure. Beneath the mask was a slightly gloomy, broad face. His attire made him look like a member of Konoha's Anbu or Root. However, Yu frowned slightly, immediately recognizing that the opponent was the owner of a new pharmacy that had opened on the street facing the Hyuga clan grounds 3 months ago. Yu had passed by that pharmacy before. In his memory, this kind, broad face had a very approachable smile. So, is this a person from Root? Did Danzo Shimura send him to invite me? But that doesn't seem right. Yu couldn't help but furrow his brows deeply. He reasoned that at this time, Konoha's Anbu and Root had no reason to monitor the Hyuga clan. Furthermore, monitoring the Hyuga clan was a pointless endeavor. Any surveillance against the Hyuga, against the Byakugan, had an exposure probability of almost 100%. Moreover, this fellow from Root or Anbu clearly had bad intentions. Why does he want to kill me? Yu hadn't provoked the Anbu, and the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, wouldn't be idle enough to send an Anbu to take out Yu, who had absolutely no connection to anything important. And Yu had only this morning thrown the letter of appointment, labeled as an S-rank mission but actually an application to join Root, toward Root. Even if Danzo despised him and didn't want him to join Root, as long as Yu hadn't touched Danzo's sore spots or involved himself in Root's secrets, there was no reason to kill him. Yu had a very clear understanding of himself. A piece of trash like him didn't have enough value for Danzo to kill. So now, which faction does this guy who wants to kill him belong to? His thoughts spinning rapidly, Hyuga Yu quickly arrived at another possibility. A spy. This individual was a spy from another hidden village lurking within Konohagakure. As for why he was being targeted, it likely had to do with his contact earlier that day with Hyuga Genko of the main house. Based on this deduction, it was highly probable that the operative belonged to Kurigakure. At this thought, Hyuga Yu furrowed his brows slightly. He still couldn't quite fathom why they would make a move on him. However, the situation was already unfolding. What mattered most right now was resolving this sudden crisis. Hyuga Yu masked his expression, deactivated his Byakugan, and continued down the street without betraying a hint of emotion. The apartment he lived in was situated on the edge of the clan estate, close to Konoha's second ring. Although not large, it had to be said that the property's location was prime real estate within the village. This area was near the central Konoha T Street, the very place where little Naruto would live in the future. In fact, Hyuga Yu's neighbor was none other than Kakashi Hatake, who had been promoted to Jonin at the tender age of 12 and had recently sold his ancestral home to rent here for the sake of an easier commute. Mentioning these facts wasn't intended to show off how wealthy or high-status Hyuga Yu was, nor how well the Hyuga clan treated its ordinary members. Rather, it was to point out one crucial fact. The place he lived was a residential hub for Konoha's elite shinobi. If the enemy hiding in the shadows wanted to make a move on Hyuga Yu, they couldn't wait until he actually returned to that neighborhood. The only location that would allow them to strike and conceal their tracks was a series of alleyways connecting the Hyuga clan estate to the apartment district. Knowing this, could Hyuga Yu run? No, he couldn't. No matter how one looked at it, Hyuga Yu was merely a genin with pitifully low chakra reserves. What he feared most was a reckless frontal assault from an enemy. With his current mastery of the gentle fist, even going all out, he could at best spar with a Chunin-level opponent for a few minutes before collapsing from exhaustion, unable to mold any more chakra. Therefore, he could not call for help, he would likely be killed before backup arrived. He had to play along with the enemy, lull them into a false sense of security, and then, in a single instant, kill them. At this moment, the sun was sinking in the west. The crying of cicadas fell upon his ears like a shower of rain. With a calm expression, Hyuga Yu crossed the long street, walking beneath the very eaves where the enemy lay concealed. Until he reached the mouth of the alley, arriving at the burial ground the enemy had prepared for him. Hyuga Yu's pure white pupils suddenly contracted and tightened, revealing a sharp, cold glint filled with killing intent. He took a step, entering the darkness. Swinging his arms in a natural rhythm, as his hand swung backward, he quietly slipped a kunai from the ninja tool pouch tied at the waist of his open-chested gray kimono. Tied to the end of the handle was a paper-wrapped pellet. The instant he gripped the kunai, Hyuga Yu tensed his body. Grinding his toes into the ground, his figure flickered slightly within the elongated shadows of the alleyway, and he suddenly accelerated. He plunged headlong into the alley, which was only 300 meters long. In that same instant, the fine hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. A tactile sense, far beyond that of a normal person, allowed Hyuga Yu to acutely perceive that the gaze focused on his back had lost its target. It faltered for less than half a second before prowling back into the shadows of the alleyway to lock onto him again, becoming more dangerous, more piercing, sharp enough to almost penetrate his flesh. Whoosh! The sound of rushing wind erupted behind him. It was the sound of the enemy realizing something was amiss and using the body flicker technique to close the distance at high speed. Hyuga Yu's eyes snapped wide open, veins bulging around his temples. Byakugan. The instant his expanded, omnidirectional vision captured the enemy in urgent pursuit behind him. Hyuga Yu lowered his body, stopped abruptly, and rolled to the side. A broad-faced ninja dressed in Anbu attire, wearing a cat face mask with only 2 whiskers, was carried forward by the inertia of the body flicker technique. Brandishing a kunai that glinted with a cold light, he brushed past Hyuga Yu, who was rolling on the ground. In that split second, he saw the boy crouching on the ground, looking up. He saw a pair of white eyes that were usually as dull as a camel's, but had instantly turned as ferocious as a lion's. Ujima Junito was an intelligence ninja. He belonged to the absolute lowest tier of the Kurigakure spy network infiltrating Konohagakure. In layman's terms, it didn't matter if he was exposed. Or rather, he had been dispatched precisely to be exposed if necessary, a pawn to be sacrificed, paying with his life to help his single-line handler acquire intelligence or clear obstacles. At 10 a.m. today, he had received a mission. Disguise himself as a Konoha Anbu and kill a Hyuga branch house genin named Hyuga Yu. Ujima Junito didn't know why his superior wanted to eliminate this Hyuga branch house genin, but he could make a rough guess. At 9 a.m., he had seen Hyuga Yu walking out of the mansion of the main house elder, Hyuga Sosuke. This implied a very high probability that the target had made contact with Hyuga Genko, a main house member Ujima had been keeping under close surveillance. Combined with the subsequent intelligence provided in the mission briefing that Hyuga Yu was a medical nin, his superior had made a judgment. Hyuga Yu's existence might impact Kurigakure's upcoming operations. Therefore, this variable had to be strangled in the cradle. As for what Kurigakure's upcoming operations were, why would such a weak Hyuga Yu affect them? And wouldn't killing Hyuga Yu right now alert the enemy, creating even larger variables for the mission? Ujima Junito had an inkling of the answers, but he could not know them. A ninja selected to be a spy couldn't be a fool, especially when Konohagakure was home to the mind-reading Yamanaka clan. All he knew was that right here, right now, relying on his strength as a seasoned chunin, he had to eliminate a weak Hyuga branch house genin who hadn't even fully mastered his clan's secret techniques, and he had to do it without causing too much of a commotion. However, after reviewing the intelligence on the assassination target, Ujima Junito instinctively caught a whiff of something off about the target's meager service record. The record read as follows. Hyuga Yu, genin, missions completed. D rank, 46, C rank, 12. Strength assessment, genin, Kekkei Genkei, Byakugan activated, but has not mastered gentle fist art, 8 trigrams 32 palms. Taijutsu, ninjutsu, genjutsu, and shuriken jutsu are all subpar. Through self-study, has mastered several medical ninjutsu, including one high-difficulty B-rank medical ninjutsu. Konoha Year 46, graduated early from the academy. Konoha Year 47, joined Reconnaissance Team 8 and participated in the Third Great Ninja War. In the same year, during an Iwagakure raid in the Land of Grass, the team leader Chunin was killed, and 2 teammates were killed. Konoha Year 48, joined the reorganized Reconnaissance Team 8. In the same year, the team leader Chunin was killed. Later participated in the Chunin exams held by Konoha. 2 teammates died under mysterious circumstances. Recuperating from injuries until present day, Konoha Year 49. Looking at this record, Ujima Junito made his judgment. This was an ordinary genin who hadn't even fully mastered the clan's secret techniques meant to protect him. Aside from possessing a pair of Byakugan, which seemed more like a burden to him than an asset, his combat ability was arguably inferior to some fresh, elite academy graduates. Yet, it was precisely this ninja, weak in every sense of the word, who had managed to survive the Third Great Ninja War to this day, despite his team leaders and teammates being wiped out on 2 separate occasions. There was likely something wrong with this guy. Either he was so lucky that even the heavens couldn't bear to take his life, or Hyuga Yu possessed abilities that the intelligence reports failed to document. And such individuals were typically referred to by spy ninja, who lived and died by information, as Intelligence black holes. Before obtaining intelligence and preparing to make his move, he had already steeled himself with the resolve to go all out against his target, to kill without a shred of mercy. However, the moment he actually set foot in this burial ground he had chosen for his target, this 300-meter-long alleyway, his heart gave a sudden, slight tremor. It wasn't just because of the cruelty and eeriness revealed in that brat's pure white eyes, but because the environment had changed. This was an ordinary street in the Hidden Leaf. Precisely because it was ordinary, the houses were nothing like the uniform, neat Japanese-style courtyards within the Hyuga clan grounds. They lacked unique architectural features, built mostly on principles of pragmatism, fusing various styles, haka, cylindrical structures, towers, and Japanese torii gates. They were arranged in a staggered, uneven pattern. The only commonality was that these buildings were all at least 4 stories high, and the entire alleyway was laid out facing southeast. As the sun sank in the west, the long shadows cast down, enveloping the entire alley. For an assassin, this place was sparsely populated with poor lighting, truly an excellent treasure ground for stalking, assassinating, and burying the evidence. But the situation had shifted slightly. When the target becomes aware of the assassin's intent, this kind of environment transforms into a natural and perfect hiding ground for the target to evade pursuit. Just like right now. Whoosh! Just as Ujima Junito steadied his stance and cast a sinister gaze upon the face of the white-eyed brat not far away, a kunai knife used the shadows cast by the buildings to slice a cold, sharp arc through the air, shooting straight for his throat. Relying on ninja instincts carved into his muscles, Ujima Junito immediately raised his hand, hooked a kunai from his ninja pouch, and swung it in a rotational arc. Clang! The 2 kunai collided, striking sparks and emitting a crisp sound in the desolate alley. However, a subtle difference in the sensation made Ujima Junito's heart skip a beat. His gaze involuntarily followed the deflected kunai as it fell. Tied to the tail of the kunai was a paper-wrapped pellet. The sparks that had splattered out struck the pellet. In the next instant, bang! Violent smoke was released from it. Ujima Junito immediately held his breath and covered his nose. Tapping his toes on the ground, he leapt backward out of the smoke's range, his eyes darting rapidly while in midair to capture the target's figure. However, when he looked again toward Hyuga Yu's position, all he could see was an empty alley and a pair of shoes that had been taken off. That brat fled. Ujima Junito's expression, hidden under his cat face mask, changed slightly. No, he reacted in an instant. Intelligence stated that Hyuga Yu had not mastered the body flicker technique. Furthermore, the body flicker creates a distinct whoosh sound when used. Ruling out the possibility of Yu using the body flicker to escape, and seeing the shoes on the ground, Ujima Junito immediately formed a judgment. Threw a smoke bomb to block vision. Quickly took off shoes during the process to move and hide, avoiding the sound of footsteps. Because he couldn't outrun me, he hid in the shadows of the buildings, attempting to muddle through and survive. Ujima Junito took a deep breath, his gaze turning icy. However, unfortunately, you chose a dead end. He cast his gaze into the shadows of the alley not far away. The alley formed a T shape. Ujima Junito had arrived later but blocked the rear section leading toward the apartments. With Hyuga Yu's speed, it was impossible for him to have escaped from the other end in that split second. Therefore, Ujima concluded that the brat was currently hiding within this dead-end alley. Perhaps hiding behind a dumpster, or maybe helpless enough to be praying to the gods, executing a clumsy transformation jutsu to become a telephone pole or a wooden gate, covering his mouth and sobbing, hoping not to be discovered. Ujima Junito curled the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a mocking smile. Tap, tap, he began to walk forward, his grip tightening on the handle of his kunai. His gaze was gloomy and sharp, he looked just like a butcher about to deprive a lamb of its life. As he took his steps, in the next instant, Ujima Junito, who came from the village hidden in the mist, was proficient in the hiding in mist technique, and had trained his hearing to acuity through assassinations within the mist. He faintly heard a sound behind his own back. Creak, creak. It sounded like that, like someone walking on tiptoes across sand. Despite being careful to the extreme, it was inevitable that a slight sound was made. Ujima Junito felt it was strange. He abruptly whipped his head around to the limit of 130 degrees behind him. The gloomy alley was as desolate as before. Looking further out, the 3 Hokage rocks were plated with a brilliant gold rim under the glow of the twilight. There was nothing behind him. Phew, Ujima Junito exhaled, thinking he might have had an auditory hallucination. He turned his head back, preparing to step forward again. But just as he twisted his head back, that sound, faint as an ant crawling, rang out again. Creak, creak. This time, the footsteps were brisker and cleaner, as if someone had lightly taken a step to the other side. Ujima Junito's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't have heard it wrong this time. This was unmistakably a ninja footwork known as the Nanba walk, a gait capable of silencing the sound of a ninja's footsteps, leaving absolutely no noise even when walking on old, creaky wooden floors. However, this was only theoretical silence. To some ninjas with hearing far beyond ordinary humans, ears sharp to a near inhuman degree, even this footwork would leave extremely faint traces. And as a mist ninja proficient in the silent killing technique, Ujima Junito happened to be exactly that kind of keen-eared ninja. Which meant, that brat was right behind him. At this thought, Ujima Junito felt as if ants were crawling all over his back. Without further hesitation, he spun his body around abruptly like a spinning top. However, in his field of vision, both behind him and in front of him, there was still nothing. The shadows cast by the building swallowed everything, making it impossible to determine the enemy's location through light and shadow. But Ujima Junito was absolutely certain, there was someone behind him. Creak, creak, the footsteps, continuous and faint like a death warrant, rang out again. As he constantly scanned the empty alley, those creaking footsteps seemed to follow the turning of his head, constantly sounding from behind his back. Ujima Junito felt his heart beating faster and faster, his emotions growing increasingly irritable. Hey, his face was slightly pale, but he forced a sneer. Brat, do you think playing these tricks on me will work? All just. While speaking, Ujima Junito's hands were faster than his mouth. He swiftly raised his hands and formed 3 hand seals. Ox, snake, ram, attempting to quickly unleash a ninjutsu to alter the bizarre situation he was facing. Water style. Hiding in mist technique. The hiding in mist technique. This ninjutsu was the precursor to the silent killing technique. By converting chakra into mist and expelling it from the mouth or beneath the feet, it created a dense fog environment. At the same time, this water mist, permeated with his own chakra, possessed a crude sensory effect. If there really was someone behind him, they would immediately be marked by Ujima Junito. He could then use the water mist to blind the opponent's vision, making them unable to keep up with his movements, effectively countering the bizarre invisibility jutsu the opponent was displaying. Whoosh! A large amount of dense fog was generated by Ujima Junito, permeating and expanding outward. He finally grasped the situation behind him. However, what terrified Ujima Junito was, behind his back, where he now seemed to have grown an eye and could finally observe. There was still nothing. Ha! Ha! Faced with this horrifying turn of events, Ujima Junito could no longer maintain his composure. With his heart pounding rapidly against his chest as if about to explode, he gasped for breath. Where the hell is that brat? Blood vessels gradually crept into his eyes, and his chakra began to surge madly. The violent mist completely lost control. With the continuous input of chakra, it kept generating and expanding. To find Hyuga Yu, he spared no cost, even risking the exposure of his identity as a mist ninja. The dense fog enveloped the entire alleyway and the buildings within hundreds of meters. Finally, Ujima Junito's eyes lit up. He jerked his head to look in a specific direction and couldn't help but let out a ferocious grin. "I found you, brat." However, the response he received was SZZZT. In a flash, the wind roared, reflecting the last ray of sunlight at dusk. An arrow, 1.15 meters in length, thunderously pierced through the surging thick fog. Under Ujima Junito's stunned and uncomprehending gaze, it drew a brilliant, golden arc of killing intent. With a forceful posture that was faster, more urgent, and harder to evade than any ordinary ninja's shuriken throw, the arrow pierced through Ujima Junito's brow. Thus, the 32-year-old Kurigakure Chunin, Ujima Junito, died.